So this video is about key features of quadratic functions. It's an extension of what we did yesterday. So the first thing you're going to want to do when you see something in standard form, which is this example, is to find your vertex and your axis of symmetry. So to do that, you need to use the equation x equals negative b over 2a. So to do that, we need our ABCs. So our a value is what's associated with the x squared, so 2. Our b is what's with x, so negative 4. And our c is the constant, negative 6. Then I'm going to plug in to this equation. So notice how there's a negative with the b, so don't forget to bring that negative over and then put your b value in. So our b value is negative 4 over 2 times a, and our a is also 2. So that's going to give us a 4 over a 4, which is going to equal a 1. So we just found x is equal to 1. So since x is equal to 1, that's going to be our axis of symmetry, and that's part of our vertex, which it asks for down here. So we know it's going to be 1 comma something. So in order to find the other part, you're going to go into your calculator, you're going to go to table, and after you go to table, you're typing in your original equation. So 2x squared minus 4x minus 6. And make sure when you're typing this in, you're using the minus sign here and not the negative. We need minuses in between. Then you press enter. And you can start on whatever you'd like. So, but I'm going to start on 1 since we found x was 1. And that's going to tell me my vertex right off the bat. So 1 is negative 8. Okay, we also need to find our y-intercept, so I'm just going to go ahead and do that while I'm in the calculator. And 0 is negative 6. That's my y-intercept. So before I answer any of these other questions, I'm going to go ahead and make my table. In the middle of my table, or somewhere near the middle, I'm going to put my vertex. So I think this is the middle, 1, negative 8. You always want to put your vertex in the middle. So then from there, I'm going to get a couple points before and a couple points after. So above it is 0, negative 6, negative 1 is 0, negative 2 is 10, and negative 3 is 24. So that's not going to fit on our table and our graph, so I'm just going to ignore that one. Now I'm going to go back to the other side, and 2 is negative 6, 3 is 0, 4 is 10, and just like before, the next one is 24, so that's not going to fit. So the first thing I want to do when I'm graphing is I'm going to put the axis of symmetry on my graph. So x equals 1 means I go on the x-axis to 1 right here, and I'm going to put a dashed line up and down. And that is x equals 1. Now I'm going to go ahead and plot my points. So negative 2 is 10. Negative 1 is 0. 0 is negative 6. 1 is negative 8. And then they start to repeat again. So 2 is negative 6. 3 is 0. 4 is 10. So once you have your points plotted, go ahead and connect. And remember, it's going to be a U shape. So try your best. I know when they're far away, it's hard. And then don't forget to put your arrows at the end. So from here, I can figure out my domain range. I can figure out everything else basically. So your domain for these are always your x values. And for these, my x's are going to go on forever. This graph is not going to stop. So your domain is going to be negative infinity to infinity. Your range are your y values, and that goes bottom to top. So my lowest point right here is my vertex was 1, -8. And for the range, we care about the y value. So it's going to go -8 up forever. So it's going to be -8 to infinity. We know infinity is always get parentheses, but -8 is on the graph. It's a point, so it's going to get a bracket. So I'm going to skip x-intercepts for a second and go to end behavior because this is from yesterday. So end behavior is just looking at the very ends of our graph. So it says as x approaches negative infinity, so as I go to this side, which is the left side, what is my graph doing? So I'm looking here. So it's going up. So it's going towards infinity. Okay, as x approaches infinity, so that's then the right side. So my right arrow right here is also going up. So it's going to infinity. So make sure they match. With parabolas, your end behavior should always be the same. Okay, let's go back to x-intercepts. So x-intercepts are where it's going to cross the x-axis. So here's my x-axis. So it crosses right here, and it crosses right there. These are your x-intercepts. So my x-intercepts are at -1 and 3. So that's a -1, 0, if we write it as a point, and a 3, 0. We could also see that from up here, -1, 0, 3, 0. So next we're doing interval of increase and decrease. So that part's new. So we have to use our axis of symmetry to split it. So I have half my graph right here, and the other half of my graph right here. And it's splitting at 1, at our axis of symmetry, x equals 1. So if I was a person walking on this hill, if I start here, as I go this way, I'd be running downhill. So since this is downhill, this is the decrease side. And as I go from here now, because I'm at the bottom of my hill, or the bottom of my valley, now I'm going uphill. So this side is increase. And so what we're going to do is we're going to write it using infinities. So on this left side, it goes, left side is negative infinity, and it's stopping at 1. So my interval for this left side, my decrease side, is going to be negative infinity to 1. And they're going to get parentheses. My increase side starts at 1 and then goes to the right side, which is infinity. So it's going to be 1, infinity, and it gets parentheses. So it gets parentheses because when you're here at this vertex, it's not increasing or decreasing. So you're going to put parentheses on it. The last thing is average rate of change, AROC, average rate of change, and that's where you're going to use the slope formula, which I know we haven't used in a while. So that's m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And right here they give you x values. So -2 something and 0 something. So if I go back up here, -2 is 10 and 0 is -6. So those are the values I am going to use for my equation. x1, y1, x2, y2. So let's go ahead and plug in. So y2 is -6 minus y1 is 10. x2 is 0 minus x1 is -2. So don't forget it's always minus in between. You have to bring those over. So this ends up being a -16 over, that becomes plus 2. So my average rate of change from -2 to 0, from about here, from -2 to 0, is -8. Okay, so for our next example, I give you the graph. So don't forget, up here is your vertex. So that's the first thing you want to label when you're given a graph. 1, 2, 3, 4, comma, 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4, comma, 4. So I want you to go ahead and do this problem on your own and check it with the answer key.